in making these kinds of comments. And so, of course, the checking that they have in mind has mostly been carried out with leaks and occasional public rebukes. But the question arises, what's wrong with that? Why isn't it entirely appropriate for the national security managers to check wrongful policy decisions of the elected officials? This brings me to my third point, and I'll conclude very briefly with this. There's a lot wrong with that. It's wrong institutionally, it's wrong politically, and it's wrong historically, and mostly constitutionally. It's wrong institutionally because there is a world of difference between checking based on law violation and checking based on policy disagreement. Checking by an independent counsel who prosecutes a crime based on an indictment that's handed down by a federal grand jury is enforcing an act of Congress that enforces the constitutional scheme. Blocking a lawful policy initiative chosen by democratically elected officials undermines that constitutional scheme. Second, politically, policy checking by the national security managers creates a cycle of retaliation that undercuts not only the president's legitimacy, but ultimately their legitimacy as well. Politically, it undercuts the president because it makes it appear obviously as though the president can't control his own security apparatus, calls into question the president's bona fides when he relies upon the intelligence community in making decisions on issues such as the North Korean nuclear program or the Iranian nuclear program. Moreover, it undercuts the national security manager's own legitimacy. They are deferred to not simply because they are experts, but because of their electoral connection. They hold the offices that they do because of their connection to an elected official, the president. It also invites retaliation by the president when they go after him. He ends up calling them Nazis in the leadership of the leadership of the CIA, political hacks, the leaders of the CIA, and the consequence is that to retain credibility, the leaders of the national security bureaucracy need to incubate their own freestanding legitimacy. They need to find support within the body politic. That's an extremely dangerous thing in a democracy, but it might be not all that difficult for them to do. As things have turned out, fewer than 30% of millennials now believe it's essential to live in a democracy in this country. 1 out of every 6 Americans now believe it would be a good thing to have the army rule. Less respect is paid by the public to institutions over which they have no control, the police and the army, than their own institutions, legislatures, city councils, as a historical phenomenon. Finally, historically, as I say, anyone who thinks that the national security managers would be a legitimate institution to safeguard the civil and political liberty of the American people has never read, among other things, the report of the Church Committee. I mean, it requires a triumph of hope over experience to trust the authors of past episodes of repression as a reliable safeguard against future episodes of repression. Why would anyone believe that shorn of the few remaining strings of accountability, they would not revert to their own ways, particularly in the event of a serious national security crisis? Finally, as I say, constitutionally, concern is even greater. Under our Constitution, power was intended by the framers to flow from the three branches of our government to the bureaucracy.